Hey guys, Catlin here with your homework help for lesson 11. We skipped lesson 10 if you didn't notice that, and we jumped right into lesson 11 on Wednesday. And we're finding quotients, which means we're dividing, and the rules for multiplying and dividing are the same. So we know that a positive times a positive is positive, and a positive times a negative, a negative times a positive is negative, and a negative times a negative is positive. And all of that works for division too. So if we divide 24 by negative 6, we know that a positive and a negative make a negative quotient. So this is going to be negative, and 6 goes into that 4 times. 15 divided by 3/10. This is the same as 15 divided by 3, so I know it's going to be 5, but since my decimal's over 1, my answer is going to be 50. So I'm dividing 15 by 3, and that gives me the 5, and then tack on the 0 because of the decimal move there. And a negative divided by a positive, like we see here, is negative, so negative 50. If that doesn't make sense, you could always write it like this: 0.3 divided by 15. One decimal move, one decimal move. So you really are thinking about this as 3 into 150, which is why that's negative 50. And a negative divided by a negative is positive. So we know this is going to be positive, but the first number is the number you're dividing into. So this is actually less than 1. It's a proper fraction, 2/10, or simplified down to a fifth. So that's the same as 5 underneath a 1. So you're dividing both of those by 4 is another way to think of that. And it's positive because of the negative operation there. We're continuing to find some quotients. So some more practice for you. We talked about on Thursday. I don't think we talked about it much on Wednesday, but we're going to talk about it on Thursday. If you're going to divide fractions, you're going to do keep, change, and you're going to flip. So remember that from elementary school. That's this first one. You change it to multiplication, and the second fraction becomes its reciprocal. So multiply by the reciprocal is what you'll hear me say a lot. Have you multiplied by the reciprocal? And 2/5 times 4/3 is the same as 8/15 for that first one. The second one there, when you keep, change, flip, you get 9/4 multiplied, and this is negative, it says negative 3/4, so negative 4/3 when you flip it. And you can do 9 times 4, 4 times 3, but I always like to simplify before I multiply. Common factors out of the diagonals. 3 goes into that 3 times. 3 goes into that 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. And a positive times a negative is negative. So this answer is actually negative 3. The next one that I'm going to do here, kind of give myself some space. I'll come over here. Negative 5 divided by negative 1/3 is the same as multiplying by negative 1/3's reciprocal, and that's going to be negative 3/1. So I flipped it. Negative times a negative is a positive. 5 times 3 is 15, and 7 times 1 is 7. So that's what you get for that one. And the last one, D, I'll do this one in green, right, y'all? Keep the first one, change it to multiplication, and flip it to its reciprocal afterwards. So that becomes 6/1. A negative times a positive is negative, and we have some common factors. 3 goes into that once and that twice. 5 times 2 is 10, so we get negative 10/1, or just negative 10 for that particular answer. Is the solution positive or negative? So all you got to do is write plus or minus for this one. 2 times something is 6. That something has to be 3, and it has to be positive, so positive. Negative 2 times something is positive, so for that product to come out positive, the x would have to be negative, because a negative times a negative is positive. 2.9 times something is negative 6.04. That something would have to be negative for the product to come out negative, otherwise it would be positive. And then a negative times something that equals a negative, that something must be positive, otherwise the product would be positive. All right, let's look at number 4. Find the solution mentally. All right, so for the first one, that's pretty straightforward. 3 times negative 4, positive times a negative is negative. The next one we'll do right here. B times negative 3 equals negative 12. We're doing these in our head. So what number can I multiply by 3 to get 12? I know that's 4, right? And for it to come out negative, it has to be positive here because a negative times a negative would make that positive. So we want b to be a positive 4. All right, the next one. Okay, negative 12 times something is positive 12. Well, if I put just a regular 1 there, 1 times negative 12 would be a negative 12. So I've got to be a negative times a negative to get a positive. So C must be negative 1. And then lastly, what can I multiply by 24 to make it get smaller and be negative? Oh, goodness. So to make it smaller, it's got to be a fraction. And to make it negative, it's got to be negative. So D has got to be a negative. So we know that. And what number could I multiply by 24 to cut it in half? And anytime I want to find half of a number, you can multiply it by half. And so negative 1/2 is our answer there. Okay, so let's look at number 5. This is similar to our mixing problem that we saw on the first set of homework problems on the first page, or second page, I believe. So we're making a shade of green, and this painter mixed together blue and green and white to make this particular shade. And we are going to make up to 100 cups. Oh, goodness. So whenever you're doing a mixing problem like this, tables are the way to go. So you want to set up a table for this, and you want to put all of your mixtures in the table. So we've got blue. We've got, we also have green that we're putting in there. And we also have a particular amount of white. So we need all of our colors to go in there. And then in these mixture tables, I always like to have a total one because the total is putting all of the mixtures together and tells you how much is in your actual bottle quart-wise. So you're putting 1.5 quarts of blue. Okay, so 1.5 blue. 2, okay, gotta be careful here. So 1.5 quarts, 2 cups, and a half a gallon. Everything is like in weird measurements. So we need to know how many quarts are in a gallon, how many cups are in a quart, so on and so forth. Okay. So if you remember, I don't know if you've ever done this before, in a gallon, there are 4 quarts, so 4 Qs. All right. And inside of each quart, there are 2 pints. All right, so 2 P's inside of each one of those. And inside of each P, we'll kind of zoom in here, inside of each P, there are 2 cups. 2 cups make a pint. So inside of a quart, you have 4 cups. And inside of a gallon, you have 2 times 8, which is 16 cups. So, excuse me. All of these conversions can help you with this, and I would recommend putting everything in the same terms. I'm going to work with cups because that's what the final question asks for. I want to make 100 cups. So 1.5 quarts. A full quart would have 4 cups. A half a quart would have 2. So 4 plus the 2 means I've got 6 cups of blue. So 6 cups of blue. And then I've got 2 cups of green. And a half gallon, that would be half of this. That would mean 2, 4, 6, 8 cups. That's 8 cups white. And that would give me a total of 16 with this original mixture because 6 plus 2 plus 8 is 16. Now, what we want to do is we want to get this bad boy up to 100 cups, right? So we got to multiply something to get this up to 100. So if I do 100 and I divide by 16, it's probably not going to be very pretty as a decimal. Oh, it's not bad. 6.25. So I divided these two and I got 6.25. So that means that's what I can multiply by to get all of these, or 6 1/4. All right. So I'm going to do that for all of them. 6 times 6.25, that's 37.5. And 2 times 6.25, that's 12.5. And 8 times 6.25 is 50. So there's my mixture. If I mix all of those together, it keeps the same proportion because we multiplied them all by the same number. And we get 100 cups like they wanted us to do. So how much of each color? Excuse me, 37 cups of blue, 12 and a half cups of green, and 50 cups of white. And that is it for lesson 11. You guys have a good rest of the day.